Hey Clashes, the WWE event is going to end within the next couple of days. And this means we're going to lose the event troops on offense, but as well on defense. So the question is, what are going to be the top strategies after the event is over? We're going to take a look at the top 5 with using a power score ranking. The first number here is the difficulty of that strategy, which means a 1 is super challenging, the 10 is super easy to play. The second number is going to be the strength of the strategy. A 1 is a pretty bad strategy, and a 10 is just a powerhouse of a strategy. And we're starting things off with the number 6 strategy, actually, because this one dropped out of the top 5. I still wanted to mention it because the Mass Root Riders have the new equipment, and as well, the bases are just not really fitting their style anymore as much. This is why I gave them a power score of 4 and 7. It's still strong, but quite challenging to execute as well with those new adaptations of the base builders. And with that, we're coming to the number 5 spot. It is Super Witches. That's right, they're still within there. And even though we had the changes to the giant skeletons spawn from the Super Witches, it is pretty easy to execute, I want to say, like in the middle of the pack. And if you're wondering, I have used Electro Dragon spam as like a 10 out of 10 when it comes down to the difficulty of executing a strategy. This is why some of those numbers might seem quite low if you feel like, oh, Super Witches are quite easy for me to play. Again, the 10 would be Electro Dragon spam. So this is why this one is still a 5. But Super Witch power-wise is incredibly strong. If you're familiar with how you can control a fireball, you're good to go to have success versus pretty much every base out there. Yes, I know that the giant skeletons, as I mentioned, were changed with their housing space, which means spring traps can now affect them. But this is not as big of a deal. I've now played this strategy quite a lot in different, like Clan War as well, a little bit on Legends and stuff, and I have pretty much never really lost a giant skeleton where I would have said, oh yeah, that is why I maybe did not 3-star if I actually failed with the strategy. The same thing obviously in pro matches. You can see Super Witches still quite a bit in the pro scene, and if they fail, it is pretty much never for the reason of giant skeletons getting spring trapped away. So still a really powerful strategy which is going to get you through every single base. The approach here is always the same. You're going to have a fireball on the flank of the entry of your Super Witches. But typically, you're always depending on the fireball area. And then you're just starting on the left or on the right side of that fireball opening. You're going for value, you're going for defenses, you're going for pathing for your Super Witches. If that is set up like in this space where we're able to interrupt the ring and then just enter onto one of those sides, you're good to go with a great attack. You're having as well the Archer Queen with the Siege Barracks on the outside. You're having the Royal German support just to make sure that you're achieving that the Super Witches are staying inside the middle of the base, just wrecking everything in their path. The King is quite nice as well because the King is not just giving tankiness, but as well they can open the compartments. Earthquake Boots can be used here as well. If you're struggling with your Witches spreading too much, you can use as well the Spiky Bow with the Gauntlet together. But in general, there's a lot of possibilities when it comes down to the equipment, what exactly you want to run on those different heroes. Archer Queen as well, I just think the action figure is literally a top 3 equipment in the entire game. It's the number 1 equipment for the Archer Queen. This is why I have it pretty much for every single strategy, which I can possibly fit it in, because I just think it's so strong on the higher levels. But for this one, you can tell, the base is gone, and we're getting a nice and easy 3-star. With that, Super Witches on number 5. With the solid power score. But let's move on, because the next strategy is going to be a fireball with the Warden Charge and Rocket Loons. And this power score looks kind of funny, to be honest, but that's, I think, the fairest way on how to put it. Warden Charge Rocket Loons is one of the toughest strategies right now to execute in the game. It is really challenging because you're multitasking. There is no, like, okay, always do this versus any base. No, it's always depending on the base, always flexible. Sometimes you're doing early fireball, sometimes you're doing delayed fireball, sometimes you're sending your heroes with the warden, sometimes you're sending the heroes without the warden. There are so many opportunities and things you have to consider, and at the same time, you have a lot of things to do at the same time during the attack. So multitasking is such an important thing. But if you can master this, if you can control this, it's literally one of the best strategies in the entire game. And this is as well where I want to highlight how exactly the ranking works with the power score. While the difficulty is still important for the ranking, I have made sure that the strength is the more important factor. So if you want to put this into numbers, I have to make sure that both of those numbers for the power score, which means the difficulty and the strength, I will multiply the difficulty with a 1 and the strength with a 1.5. And this is then the final power score pretty much for the overall attack. So if you're wondering why, for example, this one is higher than the Super Witch is, even though the difficulty is so much harder, that's the reason. That's the reason on why exactly some of the strategies are ranked higher or lower, even though the numbers seem to be like talking different story. But really, I feel like the strength of the strategy could be the #1 criteria, and that's the reasoning on how the strategies are ranked with how they're ranked in the end. But let's get back to the attack. As I already said, there's many different possibilities for the attack itself. You can do an early fireball. Some teams like to prefer that, but then they typically don't go for the angry jelly instead of another pet. But if you want to have a deeper fireball, then you can go with the angry jelly because that saves you a lot of time, especially in the beginning. The next option then is the warden under a lot of threat after the fireball, for example? If the answer is yes, you can support that warden with your heroes, with your king and queen, but this most of the time means as well that the time within the attack is a really big problem. Because the reason why this strategy works time-wise is because you're poking into the base from a lot of different angles and really trying to like get the base smaller and smaller and smaller over time. Because the warden charge itself is always the star of the show for this strategy. The rock recruits, even though you have many of them, are just here for the support. With those, you want to push the troops into the right direction and push the heroes into the right direction and support them, making sure that they can really shine in this strategy. On the back end, you always have the royal champion herself with, I just like the shield and the spear. I think it's a solid combination. You can as well go, I think, with the electric boots and with the spear, but that's kind of up to you. I just like the combination of the shield and the spear. Just such a nice burst in the end that you can take down always a really big compartment on her own, and that's just nice to have. But with that, we're coming to a new strategy within the top 5, and that is the Super Hog Riders. The reason why I put them into the top 5 is just the action figure. Because that equipment is empowering especially one type of strategy, and that is hero dives. And that's exactly what this strategy is. This is why I gave it a power score of 6. It's not that hard to execute. At the same time, a strength score of 8. So one of the strongest strategies there is. And I could actually see myself putting and like upping this even to like a 9 in the power score. I just think it's so crazy good. You just need to master it and see and know the limits of your troops. But how do you execute it? So the concept here is always the same, and that is why it's easier, for example, to execute than some of the other strategies. The concept here is always that you want to get in range of the clan castle with your king and queen. For that, you need to pick an entry point and just make sure that you can enter the base with your entry point. And to do that, to enable that, to push your troops into the right direction, you're using the Royal Champion charge. You're using the Hog Rider puppet and the Electro Boots because typically you're not going that deep into the base. You just want to create a quick funnel, which is still pretty consistent because the Royal Champion charge with 3 to 4 invisibility spells can get way more than you might think, even without the haste vial or like another DPS equipment. So with that, we were able to clear out one of the flanks. The other flank is funneled with the Yeti, and we still have the Valkyrie to support as well if needed. And with that, my troops are going to path into the base. The problem here, though, is that the ice golems from the clan castle actually froze my lock launcher. This is why we can't get into the core. Now you would say, okay, iTzu, then you're just waiting to see where the heroes go. Not really. This is a complete no-go. What you're trying to do is always you want to have the Super Hog Rider started as early as possible, but at the same time, wait a little bit for the heroes to get at least a tiny little bit of pathing created. For us now, it's all about pushing those heroes back into the core. And this is what I'm trying to achieve right now with having my Super Hog Riders started at the top side. And what you should do as well is always have the Royal Champion then right behind the Super Hog Riders. I forgot to deploy her. That's not good. You should not do that. So I will just deploy her right now. But typically you want to have her just right behind the Super Hog Riders so she can handle skeleton traps, in general, like dish out a ton of damage, and she's staying always safe. Another thing which is so nice about the Super Hog Riders is that they're creating their own cleanup. The Super Hog Rider is always going to split into a Super Rider, which pretty much like works as a cleanup troop, like it's a melee troop which attacks anything, and a Super Hog. A Super Hog works exactly the same as a regular Hog Rider, for example. And that's kind of how you push the entire base. You see as well, the attack is not even close. It's just such a powerhouse of strategy. It works versus any base out there, and since it's using a Royal Champion charge, it's impossible to defend pretty much. So yeah, I mean, give it a try. As I said, I could see myself as well ranking this Switch even higher, but it's still somewhat new in the current form with the action figure, so I did not want to like overreact and put it like way higher, but still, it is for sure a top 3 strategy in the game, which I'm really happy about. Number 2 strategy, and that is now the easiest one on this entire list, is going to be the mass invisible Royal Champion charge with the dragons as a cleanup. Again, out of all of the entire list, it is the by far easiest strategy. But again, since I'm having the Electro Dragons, the Mass Electro Dragons as like 10 out of 10 when it comes down to the difficulty, I cannot make this, like rank this any higher when it comes down to that, like that specific stat. Power-wise, it is as well just really stupid. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, all of those Royal Champion charges are just incredibly strong, and this one is just super strong, especially considering how easy it is. The concept here is always as well that you're just trying to take down as many buildings as possible with the Royal Champion charge, and especially buildings which are important then later for your dragon. So air defenses are a big target, Monolith are for example a super important target as well. Town Hall is a nice thing, especially because if you're using the haste vial and as well like I did the rage with the Royal Gem together, the Town Hall is just going to melt within seconds. The rage on this part is really flexible, usable. You can use it for the dragons, you can use it as I did for the Royal Champion. It is really up to you and up to every single base, but you have those options. I know as well that some people like to use the revive spell, but I just think the spell is pretty trash. It's always a plan B spell, I feel like, which means if you're not good enough to keep a Royal Champion alive, then you have this plan B of reviving her. But just adding more invisibility spell typically is always giving and providing you more freedom and as well more strength to the attack. What do I mean by more freedom? Well, if you're doing Royal Champion charges and you're trying to revive a Royal Champion, which is close by to, for example, defending heroes, you have to always wait for those heroes to go down, and you're just limiting your options with that revive spell. There's always a better option than the revive spell, and as I said, it is always a plan B spell for worse attackers. There's no reason to bring it. This is why you will not see any pros as well use it either. It's just not needed, and in the current form it's just not good. I would love to see it like getting buffed or some love where you're reviving maybe a pet as well with the hero together, something like that. Then it would be a different story, but right now in its current form it's just not good enough to make it into this strategy. Simple is key, and that's exactly what we're going for here. If you want to have like another, like if you're feeling like you want to have another spell and not that many invis spells, add another rage if you want to, but really keep it simple on this one. Then the dragons just cleaning things up. It's really straightforward. I mean, as I said earlier. On this one, I even set my queen into the defending heroes, which is something you should obviously not really do because she has not that big of a chance there. As well, you can use the Archer Queen with like different equipments. The Giant Arrow is just like super safe when it comes down to, okay, maybe there's a Sweeper alive which you want to snipe, but obviously you can as well bring the action figure on this one. The Healer Puppet is a great choice. The Magic Mirror, all of those equipments will work. It's just really up to you of like what you're going to bring to the table. But if you have the action figure on a really high level, you can replace the Healer Puppet as well on this one. It really depends on your equipment level. This is a triple, right? And for that, we're coming down to the number 1 strategy. For the number 1 strategy, there is actually like 3 different versions out there. This one right now is my current favorite, that's why I'm going to highlight it. It's really taking advantage of the action figure and having the giant inside the core of the base is just amazing. The reason why I like the giant so much is just the fact that it's attacking pretty much everything what is attacking the giant. And this is not just building related. If there's a defending clan caster, if there's a defending hero, if there's something, you can just have the giant not just tank for the Archer Queen, but as well fight back versus those things. But since a lot of people were always wondering iTzu, with having no Mini Prince ability or like Giant Arrow to trigger Invis Towers, how do you handle those? Well, there's a couple of options. The first one, just do what I just did. Enter on the flank of one of those Invis Towers and trigger the Invis Tower early on with your Royal Champion. Obviously, that's not always possible, and it's just one of the options. Another option is to use the Log Launcher, if you really want to make sure that you're triggering those Invis Towers. But I wouldn't really use that as the number 1 choice, because another one is as well how we handle Invis Towers with our own spells. And this is why we have 2 skeletons and 1 additional Invis compared to other Royal Champion charges when they're using a recall. It's because typically you're using 3 to 4 of those invisibility spells for a Royal Champion charge, and this strategy is using 5 Invis spells. The reason is 2 skeleton spells, 2 invis spells, and we can trigger out of the invis tower on defense if we want to. It doesn't matter if it's in the core, it doesn't matter if it's in the entry or on the back end point, you can always do that. We are going to do that on the back end now. Just use the skeleton spell, use the invis tower on top, and make sure that the skeletons can attack one of those towers which are getting covered by the invis tower itself. With that, we're just triggering the tower. Yes, it's 2 spell slots, but still, it's just so much worth it. It's just so easy. The reason again why I'm using those minion prince equipments are just we're trying to use a replacement for the iTzu because that one is now on the inside. As I already said earlier, this is only 1 out of 3 different versions, which is this strategy, which means you can as well use the iTzu on the outside. The equipments are pretty much staying the same. You can use the healer puppet instead of the magic mirror with then the action figure together, but then you're having the minion prince inside the main push, and you should use the dark orb then with the henchman puppet. Another option as well is to just use the barbarian king instead of the minion prince at all. That works as well. I have all of those dedicated guys then for those different hero combinations on my channel as well if you want to check them out. But this right now is for sure my favorite version out of all of those 3. Well, I hope I was able to provide some more input for you, and let me know as well how you like the power score rankings for explaining more my thought process of why I have specific rankings for those strategies within the top 5 list. Otherwise, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys back tomorrow with the next class video. Until then, see ya and bye-bye.